So probably you can see my screen now. Now I think you can see my screen. Okay, what about others? Can you see my screen? Okay. So let us start today's class. In today's class, we are going to discuss like a function import concept. There's a concept like function import. Okay, 1 second, Vasant. So in today's class, we are going to discuss like import in OData web services. So function import is like a piece of code which you can write not specific to entity set. Say for example, if you closely observe your other CRUD operations, they are very specific to entity set. When you are using CRUD operations in our previous examples, we are writing the piece of code based on the entity set, specific to entity set. But function import will be generic. You can send the data from entity set 1 or entity set 2 or entity set 3 dynamically. So function import is generic and it doesn't work specific to entity set. You can use any entity set and you can send the data from this particular function import. You can take the input, you can execute the logic and send the data to any entity set via any entity set. So that entity set need not have the fields whatever we define in a specific structure. So whichever fields you want to send at runtime, so those things you can do it by using function import. So function import can be used to implement custom operations which is not specific to any entity set. Function import can be used to implement custom operations which is not specific to any entity set. So CRUD methods are specific to entity set. Remember that. But function import is generic, and I can say it is not specific to entity set. CRUD operations are specific to entity set, but function import is not specific to entity set. So that is the main difference here. The general CRUD operations which we have done till now, they are specific to entity set, but function import concept is not specific to any entity set. You can send the data via any field or any entity set through this particular function import. So for function import, we can configure input options and we can configure output options. For function import, we can configure input options as well as output options. And most importantly, I can say in single service, we can use multiple function imports, or I can say more than one function import also. In single service, we can use more than one function import also. And let me tell you one more point here. Function import. The code for function import will be written by writing the code under execute_action method. For implementing function import, we need to write the code in execute_action method. That's the standard method. For implementing a function import, we need to write the code in execute_action method. Execute_action method. So execute_action method is also one of the standard method available in, it is available in data provider extension class. Execute action is also one of the method available in data provider extension class. Execute_action is the standard method of data provider extension class. Execute action is a standard method of data provider extension class. And most importantly, I can say execute_action can handle any number of function imports. It can handle any number of function imports. Execute action is a method and it can handle any number of function imports. So let me explain with one diagram. You can see here, for example, there is a function. I want to create a function, for example, employee by country. I want to fetch the employee records based on country. For example, country India. So here EMP by country is the function import. It's the name of the function import, and country is the input parameter of that function import, and India is a value. For example, you can also write like this. You can write like this: employee by country, and something like country is equal to US. So it will fetch US specific employee records. This is the syntax to execute your function import concept. But what I mean to say is you can have any number of function imports. Like for example, I want to get airlines by airline ID. Question mark, something like airline ID equal to, for example, AA, American Airlines. So airlines by airline ID question mark airline ID equal to AA. So airlines by airline ID, that is a function import name. That's a function import name. And airline ID is the input parameter and AA is the value. Like that, you can use multiple parameters. It doesn't matter. You can use ampersand. You can use ampersand. For example, price equal to 422. You can use multiple parameters also for function import. Now, say for example, I want to fetch products by product ID based on product ID. Product ID equal to, for example, HT-1001. So in single service, a single service can have multiple function imports like this. A single service can have multiple function imports like this. But ultimately, the code for all these things should be written in execute underscore action method. Execute underscore action method. So in that method, you have to write all this coding for these function imports. So you can use like this. How you'll write all these function imports in single method? So it's very simple. You can use like case statement and end case statement. You can use like case and you can use end case statement here. Case IV underscore action underscore name. Then you can use like this. When EMP by country. When EMP by country. So you can write some piece of code here according to that function. And similarly here, when airlines by airline ID. So that's a function import, and according to that functionality, you can write some code here. So you can write some piece of code like this. Similarly, let me explain one last one. When products by product ID. So there's a function import. So according to that function import, you can implement some code here. You can implement some piece of code here. So this is how it works. So this is how it looks like. And here I can say this function import, based on the function import, it will send your output records. EMP by country may send the records based on EMP entity set. EMP by country can send the records with EMP entity set, something like that. And if you try to use a function airline by airline ID, then it can send the records with airline entity set. It can send the data based on airline entity set. And when products by product ID function is executed, it can send the output records, for example, using products entity set. Using products entity set. So I mean to say by writing the code in single execute action method is capable of sending the records with respect to EMP entity set or airline entity set, or it can send the data using product entity set. So one method can handle multiple functions, and different functions can send records via different entity sets. Execute action is one of the method. It can handle multiple functions, and based on the function, it can send the data by using an entity set. So let me write a simple note here. Execute action method can handle different function imports. And each function import can send data via different entity set. Each function import can send data via different entity sets. The last point is very important. Execute action method can handle different function imports, and each function import can send data via different entity sets. But till yesterday we were writing the code based on the entity set, specific to entity set. But here now it is not like that. You can execute any functionality. Based on that, it can send data using any entity set. So let us go according to one example. Developing OData ABAP service using function import. Let us do this. Developing OData ABAP service using function import. So step 1, you can create a project with the default settings. And step 2, you can create entity type, entity set with some DDIC structure. And step 3, okay, first let me complete these 2 steps. I'm going to say GW. Let us create a project Z function import project. Function import project. So first of all, I want to create one entity type, entity set. You can right click data model, import DDIC structure. I'm giving something like EMP as entity type, Z user info as DDIC structure. Along with that, I'm creating entity set. And I can select the required fields here. We can select some required fields here. Then I'm choosing user ID as a key field. I'm selecting user ID as a key field, and you'll get entity type, entity set now. You can save it. Now, what you need to do is we have to create a function import. If you want to create a function import, what you do is just right click your data model, create a function import here. You can right click data model. You can right click data model and create function import. I'm not talking about function module. I'm not talking about RFC or BAPI. Function import is a concept available in OData service. Function import is not directly related to a function module. Don't compare with function module. Function import is a concept used in OData services irrespective of the entity set. So I can create a function import and you can provide some name here. For example, employee by country. I'm giving some name as employee by country. I want to get employee records based on country. So employee by country is a function name now. It is the function name. EMP by country. So now that particular function is created and function can have output configuration and function will have input configuration. A function should have input configuration and you can have output configuration. So first of all, let me write it here. Right click data model and create function import. Provide function import name equal to EMP by country, for example, and continue. Step 4, you have to configure input options for function import. In step 5, you need to configure output options for function import. You can configure input options for function import, then you have to configure output options for function import. So, how to do this? Just select function import parameters here. You can see there is a function import parameters here. And function import parameters, you can add one or many parameters for this function import. For a function import, you can pass some multiple values. So in that case, you can use multiple import parameters. So let me create one. Let me add one input parameter. Input parameter for function import, I'm taking country. And I can use something like edm.string here. You can take something like edm.string. And you can provide some label, for example, country. So country is the input for this function import. Like that, you can add multiple parameters here if you want. For example, I want to add something like position. And you can use some data type and some label. So you can have multiple inputs also for every function if you want. You can just add it here. So I'm sticking to country. That is a function import I want to use with a country as import parameter. So let me do that here. Double click function import parameters and provide country with some data type as edm.string, something like that. So that is for input configuration. Country is the input for function import. So this is how we have to provide our input configuration. Now you need to think about output configuration for function import. Now you have to think about output configuration for function import. So how to do this? So if you double click your function import, If you double click your function import, you'll get one line here. So this function import can take the fields from entity type. So I can select that. This function import can take the fields from entity type. So you can select that. But from which entity type it will take the fields for output. So you can select that here. Something like EMP is entity type. And similarly, how many records it has to send? 0 record or 1 record or 0 to n number of records or 1 to n number. So that is decided by cardinality here. By using function import, I can send 0, 1 or many records. So I'm using 0 to n. I'm using 0 to n because function import can send 0 record or 1 record, any number of record. And so by using which entity set you want to send the data, that you can configure here. By using which entity set the data should be transferred. So you can provide that entity set name here. For example, EMP set is our entity set. EMP set is our entity set here. And whether you want to insert the data or whether you want to fetch the data, so based on that you can decide this get or post. You can insert the data or fetch the data based on HTTP method get or post. So I want to fetch the data, so you can use get option here. So this is the output configuration. So here you can see under output configuration, we are providing function import name. We are providing function import name. And then, so you are collecting the fields from a complex structure or entity type structure, so that we have to provide here. While sending the data, I need to collect the fields. So from where I need to collect the fields, so that you are configuring here. When function import is sending the data, it has to collect the fields. So it will collect from entity type, gather fields from an entity type, because entity type contains the fields. So which entity type, that you need to mention in the next category. It has to gather the fields from entity type, but what is entity type, so that you need to provide here. Entity type name to gather output fields. Entity type name to gather output fields. And there is a cardinality, so that will define, cardinality will define the minimum capacity and maximum capacity. So this cardinality defines the storage capacity, or while sending the data, what is the minimum count, what is the maximum count, so that has to be defined. Defines the storage capacity It defines the storage capacity, that is minimum count of records hyphen maximum count of records. Minimum capacity, it defines the storage capacity with minimum count hyphen maximum count. And when the records are transferred to front end, so it has to take which entity set into consideration, so that you need to provide here. Which entity set should be considered for sending the data to front end? So that you need to provide here. Entity set name to transfer records to front end. Entity set name for transferring records to front end application. And HTTP method, by using this function import, whether you want to fetch the data or whether you want to insert the data, that is decided here, get or post. Something like fetch, or it is like get or post. That means you are retrieving the data or you are inserting the data using function import. That is configured by using HTTP method. Whether you are fetching the data or whether you are posting the data, that means whether you are inserting the data, so that you have to provide as HTTP method. So all these things together, we call it as configuration of function import output options. All these options together, we call it as output configuration for function import. All these options together, we call it as output configuration for function import. So let me save it here. And let me write those steps. Double click function import name and provide return type kind. Return type kind equal to entity type. Then provide return type equal to, what is that entity type? Return type is nothing but entity type. So in our case, it is EMP. Then provide cardinality. Provide cardinality. I'm using 0 to n. Minimum can be 0 records or maximum can be n number of records, so that you have to provide. Then provide return entity set. Provide return entity set. For example, in our case, I want to send data by using EMP set. Then provide HTTP method. I want to fetch the data, so you can use get operation here. I want to fetch the data, so you can use get operation. So that is how we have to configure output options for function import. In fourth step, we have configured input options for function import. So next step, step 6, generate runtime objects. And open data provider extension class. generate runtime objects, and open data provider extension class. So let me do that. There is no syntax error. Directly you can generate those classes and save it in package. After saving it in package, you can go to data provider extension class. Data provider extension class. So you can double click that. And in data provider extension class, there is a specific method that is like execute underscore action. That is a standard method. You can see that here. Execute underscore action is a standard method. So you can write the code inside this method, and you can handle one or many function imports by writing the code inside execute action. You can write one or many function imports related code inside the same method by using some case and end case statement. So you can select this execute action and redefine that. You can redefine that, and here you can see there are two important parameters. That is, there are three important parameters. That is IV action name, IT parameter, and ER data. So ER data is generic here. ER data is very generic. It can send data via EMP set or something like airline set or product set or whatever. That's the reason why this function import is generally used. You can apply some if-else conditions and you can send data by using ER data with respect to any field of your any entity set. So let me write that note somewhere here. Execute underscore action method contains below standard parameters. One is IV action name. It will capture the function import triggered from front end. From front end, which function import you are trying to execute? That is captured by using IV action name. A service can have multiple function imports, but front end is executing which function import? So that we can capture by using IV action name. Function import triggered from front end is captured in OData by using IV action name. And second one is IT parameter. IT parameter, and it is responsible for capturing the input parameters, input parameter values coming from front end. IT parameter can capture the input parameter values from front end app. Third one, ER data. Third one is ER data. It is responsible for sending the output records to front end app. ER data is responsible for sending output records to front end application. It is responsible for sending the output records to front end application. So these three are important parameters of this method. So let us use those things now. So I can use a statement here, that is, I want to use one work area to capture the input parameter. For example, work area underscore parameter type slash IWBEP slash S underscore MGW name value pair. You can use like that. And then what you can do is you can declare one internal table. You can declare one internal table here, type ZCL model provider class, and by using table type EMP. So iTab is an internal table pointing to a table type EMP. And I think I've already explained, table type, table structures will be registered in MPC class. Table types, table structures will be registered in MPC class. So don't forget that. Now what you can do is you can use your case statement here. Case IV action name, and you can use end case. In between this, you can write your when statement. When my function import is executed, for example, EMP by country is a function import. So when that is executed, I want to fetch the data by capturing the input. So this is our function name. So when so-and-so function is triggered, then I want to fetch the data accordingly. So what you can do is you can use read table statement and IT parameter into work area parameter with key name equal to country. So the input parameter is country, so that we are capturing its value into work area parameter. Input parameter of function import is country, so we are capturing its value into work area. Input parameter is country for this function import, so we are capturing its value into work area. After that, you can use your select statement. For example, select star from Z user info into some table iTab, and you can use where clause, where country equal to, you can pass work area hyphen country or hyphen value, work area hyphen value. So whichever input is coming from the front end, that is supplied to select statement. Whichever input is coming from front end, we are passing it to select statement where clause. Now after this, what you can do, after this you are getting the data to local internal table here. You are getting the data to local internal table, but we need to transfer those records to front end by using ER data parameter. You are bringing the data to iTab, so that iTab records I need to send it to front end by using ER data parameter. So that means you need to copy iTab records to ER data. You need to copy iTab records to ER data if you want to send it to front end. That's the reason why we use one standard method, copy data to reference and exporting something like is data, exporting, then is data equal to something, then changing CR data equal to something. Now this is an important statement here. Copy data to reference is a method which will copy records from an internal table to ER data. So that means you need to copy the records from source to target here. In simple words, in general words, I can say you have to copy the data from the source to the target. So the source is initially the records are coming to ITAB, so you can provide that here. And the target is front end, so front end data is displayed if you copy the records to ER data. So from ITAB, the records are copied to ER data using copy data to reference method. So this statement is something similar to ITAB records copying to ER data. The above statement is something similar to this one. Not exactly same, similar to that. ITAB records are copied to ER data by using this copy data to reference. So this statement is similar to the last line which I wrote here. But if you write like this directly, then it will not check for type compatibility. If you directly write a statement like this, it can't identify the data type. What is the source data type? What is the target data type? So that's the reason why you have to use this statement, copy data to reference. So let me write a simple note here. It is a standard method to copy records from source to target. So in our case, the source is ITAB. The target is ER data. Source to target. In our case, the source is ITAB. Then the target is ER data. That's it. So when you execute this statement, when you execute this particular function import, so let us understand with a diagram, then you can easily follow now. So this is our OData service now. This is our OData service, and there will be a front end SAP OData ABAP service now. This is SAP OData service, and this is SAP UI5 or Fiori. So in simple words, I can say the input coming from front end will be received by the input coming from front end will be received into work area here. It is received into work area. So user may give some input as country, for example, equal to India or US. So that value will come to work area. And ultimately I can say ER data is responsible for transferring the records to the front end. So this is what happens according to that code. Capture the input, pass the output. So here we are not writing, according to this function import, we are not writing the code specific to entity set. You can transfer the data with respect to any entity set by copying the records from source to target. You copy the records from source to target, and you can send the data by using the target. And we can display those records by using a table format here. Something like that. Country can be input, table can be output. So first of all, let me test it now. Go to data provider extension class and redefine execute underscore action method. execute underscore action method and implement the below code. Implement the below code. So let me copy that. You can copy that, paste it here, and step 7. Step 7, what you need to do is you have to register the service. Step 8, you can test the service. Go to gateway client and test the service. Register the service, then go to gateway client and test the service. So you can activate now. You can activate now. You can go back now. And register the service. You can register the service here. And now you can go to gateway client and you need to test the service, and you need to know how to test this service. So in order to test the service, you should not provide any entity set name here, because the code what we write in function import is not specific to any entity set. The code which is written in function import is not specific to any entity set, so you need not provide any entity set name. You have to provide your function import name. You have to provide your function import name, that is emp by country is our function import. emp by country is our function import. Then you can use question mark. Country is our input field or input parameter. Equal to, you can provide some value, for example, US. Function import name, question mark, import parameter equal to US. Function import name, then import parameter country, then US is its value. So let us execute the service. So there is some problem. EMP by country is not available. There may be some spelling mistake. Let me check. EMP by country, then country. Okay, Y is uppercase. I gave Y a smaller case, but Y is uppercase, so let me provide that. I'm just correcting that. And let us execute now. So it is saying there are no records. It is not fetching the data. Let me try. Let me just go to DPC extension class. So it is not fetching the data because it is case sensitive. The function import is case sensitive. So let me provide that name as it is. Here you can see Y is smaller case, but you need to provide uppercase. So let me correct it. So this is a case sensitive name. Save it and activate now. And let us go to gateway client and test it now. If I provide country equal to India, then you can see we are able to get the records. 1002 is the user ID, country is India. And 1003, Vijay, country is India. And 1006, Raju with country India. So 1003, 4, Rajesh with country India. So our function import is successfully executed now. And it is fetching the employee records based on country India. And say for example, if I provide US, let me execute. So you can see there are some records here. 1004, Sweta with country US. And Sham Kumar with country US. Suresh with country US. So our function import is reacting to the input and it is giving the output records accordingly. Our function import is executing successfully by taking the input and it is giving the output record successfully. Now, but I want to know what is happening in the background. So let me just put a breakpoint now. Let me put a breakpoint. I just want to know what exactly is coming to work area, what is coming to IV action name. I want to know all those things. Let us put a breakpoint and let us execute the service with country equal to US. So it will stop the execution when breakpoint is encountered. It stopped the execution when breakpoint is encountered, and by the time this copy method is executed, I want to know what is coming to IV action name and what is coming to work area parameter. So you can provide that. Work area hyphen, work area underscore parameter hyphen value. So you can see it is taken as US. So whatever you provide as input with country, it is captured here as a value into work area. And I want to know what is coming to IV action name. So you can see our action name is considered as EMP by country. So it is working fine. And what exactly is coming to ITAB? What is coming to ITAB? I want to know that. Then you can go to tables and you can check here. So these are the records coming to ITAB with country as US. So you can see all those things. Sham, Suresh, Kiran, Satish, they are employee records with country US. So because of that, we are able to get those records here. So let me give this step in your notes. You have to provide like this, and this is our function import name. And this is our import parameter. And this is its value. I can give something like this. So that is input parameter value. So that is a general procedure in order to test your function import. Say for example, if you are using multiple function imports, then how you will test it? This particular service name, up to service name, it will remain same. Up to service name, it will remain same here. There won't be any difference. Up to service name, it will be same. If you are generating a new function import in the same service, up to service name, it is same, but after that you can use slash that particular function import name. For example, airlines by airline ID. Question mark, you can use airline ID equal to, for example, something like UA, United Airlines. So service URL will be same, only thing is function import name will change, input parameter will change, its value can change. So in the same service, you can have another function import and every function import can have one or more input parameters, and you can pass the values. So that is how you can test it. So one service can have multiple function imports. And one point that you need to notice now, from SAP UI5 or Fiori, how exactly these things will be executed. From UI5 or Fiori, there will be some methods to execute these operations. So in simple words, I can say from SAP UI5 Fiori, we are going to write some code by calling something like create method. When you call create method in the front end, in UI5 Fiori, and then it is going to execute create underscore entity method in the OData service. It will automatically execute if you execute create method from the front end. And say, for example, if you call update method from the front end, then it is going to execute update entity method in OData service. And if you call something like remove method in the front end, when you call remove method in the front end, it is going to execute delete entity method in the OData service. That is how the framework is designed. And in the front end, if you call something like bind rows, if you call bind rows in the front end, then it will call get entity set method in OData service. When you call bind rows in the front end, it is going to internally trigger get entity set method in OData service. And if you call bind element, method in the front end, then it is going to execute get entity method in OData service. When you call bind element method, it is going to execute get entity method in OData service. Bind element, get entity. Bind rows, get entity set. And similarly, when you call function method, in the front end, we can call function method. When you call function method, it is going to execute function import. That means it is going to execute action method in the OData service. In the front end, when you call function method, it is going to execute underscore action method in OData service. So that is how framework is designed. When we go for front end, you'll understand more about those things. What is front end method? What is OData method? How they are related? That you'll understand when we go for screen designing in the front end. So don't worry much about that. But this is the relation that you need to understand here. So every front end, based on the front end methods, OData service methods are executed here. Based on front end methods, I can say OData ABAP service methods are executed. So that is how the framework is designed.
Hello, Vijay. We can't hear you.
Vijay, most of us can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear you. Hello, no audio.
No audio. The class will end for today due to power failure. We'll continue tomorrow. I had a word with sir.
Thank you. Thanks for updating.
Okay. Welcome. Good night.